but the world was changing. It was now 80 years since a Christian had first sat on the throne of Rome, and in the intervening decades the religion of the Lamb had taken an increasingly bullish attitude to all those who refused it. Since taking control in Alexandria, Theophilus had lived up to his early promise as a statue-smashing scourge. A little earlier, he'd stolen the most sacred objects from 2 temples and paraded them through the streets for Christians to mock. The worshippers of the old gods were shocked and enraged. This was a gross and unprompted act of sacrilege, and Christians afterwards were attacked and even killed by outraged worshippers. Upsetting and unedifying though the incident was, it would be utterly eclipsed by what was about to follow. One day, early in AD 392, a large crowd of Christians started to mass outside the temple, with Theophilus at its head. And then, to the distress of watching Alexandrians, this crowd had surged up the steps into the sacred precinct and burst into the most beautiful building in the world. And then they began to destroy it. Theophilus's righteous followers began to tear at those famous artworks, the lifelike statues and the gold-plated walls. There was a moment's hesitation when they came to the massive statue of the god. Rumour had it that if Serapis was harmed, then the sky would fall in. Theophilus ordered a soldier to take his axe and hit it. The soldier struck Serapis's face with a double-headed axe. The god's great ivory profile, blackened by centuries of smoke, shattered. The watching Christians roared with delight and then, emboldened, surged round to complete the job. Serapis's head was wrenched from its neck, the feet and hands were chopped off with axes, dragged apart with ropes, then, for good measure, burned. As one delighted Christian chronicler put it, decrepit dotard Serapis was burned to ashes before the eyes of the Alexandria which had worshipped him. The giant torso of the god was saved for a more public humiliation. It was taken into the amphitheatre and burned in front of a great crowd. And that, as our chronicler notes with satisfaction, was the end of the vain superstition and ancient error of Serapis. A little later, a church housing the relics of St. John the Baptist was built on the temple's ruins, a final insult to the god and to architecture. It was, naturally, an inferior structure. According to later Christian chronicles, this was a victory. According to a non-Christian account, it was a tragedy and a farce. The Greek writer Eunapius felt the destruction was done less from reverence for the Lord than out of pure greed. In his account, the Christians weren't virtuous warriors, they were hoodlums and thieves. The only thing that they didn't steal, he observed acidly, was the floor, and that was left simply because of the weight of the stones which were not easy to move from their place. As he wrote with scorn, these warlike and honourable men had destroyed this beautiful temple out of greed. Yet once they had finished their vandalism, they boasted that they had overcome the gods and reckoned their sacrilege and impiety a thing to glory in. Nothing was left. Christians took apart the temple's very stones, toppling the immense marble columns, causing the walls themselves to collapse. The entire sanctuary was demolished with astonishing rapidity. The greatest building in the world was scattered to the winds. The